listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all things personal safety. I'm your host, Sofia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all topics self-defense. Today, we have Ryan and Amber Hoover from Fit to Fight on the pod to enlighten us on what they do to empower men and women on their journey in self-defense. If Fit to Fight sounds familiar to you all, many guests have recommended Fit to Fight as an incredible place to train for self-defense. Craig Douglas, in fact, referred to your training center as the Mascura, or the island of the Amazonian women, for how refined your training is for women's self-defense. So I would love for you all to take this opportunity to introduce yourselves and your timeline for how you have ended up with this amazing business.
Cool. I'll go first. My name is Amber. I have been in the martial arts for pretty much my entire life. I started with Taekwondo and Kempo and kind of kids martial arts. And, was one of those 12-year-old second degree Taekwondo black belts teaching the adult classes kind of thing. As I got into high school, I found Krav Maga and Jiu-Jistu and Kickboxing and just kind of this whole wide world of martial arts training that was more combative and more realistic. And so I've been training for about 10, 15 years now in Krav Maga and Jiu-Jitsu and everything that we've kind of attached ourselves to from that. I started teaching with Ryan in his Charlotte Center in 2013, and he hasn't scared me away yet. So I guess I'll kind of keep going with it.
That says more about you than it does me.
Oh, well.
That's lovely.
I'm Ryan. I started Fit to Fight in 2008. Before that, I had opened another training center about 5 years prior, and had been teaching for another 5 years prior to that. I didn't come to this until later in life. It's something I always wanted to do, just never really had the opportunity. Had wrestled a little and, did some traditional martial arts like most folks. As a smaller person, I had my fair share of little altercations here and there, and I kind of had to learn to fight and run and talk and all those things. And at some point, I just realized that the traditional martial arts I was doing didn't really look like any of the fights that I had seen or been in. So kind of went looking for other things. I wasn't familiar with Krav Maga. I'd seen it on in a Black Belt magazine, I think, an article. And at the time, we're talking late 90s, early 2000s, there really wasn't much on the East Coast for Krav Maga. So I kind of reached out to LA and found out they had an instructor course coming up in Jacksonville, Florida. It was a 7 or 8 day course, and I signed up for it. Went down, took it. It was pretty brutal. Lost a lot of people during that week, but I loved it. It was much more in line with what I was looking for. And so kind of just dove head first. Ended up teaching a lot of instructor courses for them. I was on their advisory board, co-authored 3 books with those guys on the subject. And then about 2008 or so, well, a little before that, we had introduced our fight program for training centers that were looking to add a fight class, but were struggling to get the people that actually needed a fight class to take the fight class. So we kind of packaged what we had been doing in our own training centers for folks that you wouldn't normally see in a fight class, but that really needed to be able to do that. Most fight classes look like, I don't know, it's 4 or 5 guys that played linebacker in college, and they're really not the ones that probably need that class. So
Right.
we kind of packaged that, put it out there. And then ultimately, like what happens in this industry, in a lot of industries, we saw some holes and some gaps and some things that were happening in the Krav Maga world, and took our experience with wrestling and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and those kinds of things, and kind of branched out on our own, and kind of been doing that ever since. We continue to evolve as much as possible. We bring folks in from all sorts of backgrounds to help with curriculum creation and, to continue to keep us fresh and honest.
That's wonderful. And I'm so jealous of the people that get to take your courses. I definitely am planning to go to one, and then I'll do a whole other episode to talk about how amazing it was, because I know it'll be amazing. So where are you all located, actually? I meant to ask that.
We have a training center in Charlotte, North Carolina, and then we have another one about 45 minutes west of there in Gastonia, North Carolina. And then we have affiliates kind of up and down the East Coast.
Right. Okay. Wonderful. And so does your, do you call it a kind of a gym or training center? What's the proper word for that? Would be training center?
I think training center is probably what we refer to most often.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Does your training center offer like weekly classes, or is it more of a seminar-based training only?
Both. We have classes 5 days a week at each center, and then we do a lot of in-house seminars and coach courses. A lot of people come to us for kind of instructor courses, learning how to teach the programs that we teach, and then we also do a lot of public seminars as well.
Wonderful. And how does your training differ for those weekly classes compared to your seminars when it comes to training students?
Yeah. The classes, while if you noticed, the name Fit to Fight is not an accident. So classes all have an element of fitness to them. So while you're going to spend the majority of your time focusing on whatever that class is, Jiu-Jitsu, improving technique, or Krav Maga, working combatives and self-defense and kind of meshing it together, there's always an underlying kind of fitness component to it. Along with fitness classes, of course, we have those structured as well. But ultimately, we want people to not just have the skills to defend themselves, but be in a good shape to get away from situations, to feel better, to be confident, and then have these skills as well if they are ever needed.
Yeah, so our day-to-day classes kind of are building towards an overall holistic kind of approach to training and life and whatever, and then the seminars would be, I think, more kind of supplemental. A lot of times, if people have a specific thing that they want to focus on, whether it might be firearms training, like close quarters, CQC kind of war. We have in our Charlotte Center, we have some sim rooms set up. So we do force on force training in there, living room, bedroom, that kind of thing. Our kind of general approach to training is we don't really talk in terms of basic and then advanced. It's everything is basic, and then advanced is just, I'm really good at the basics and the fundamentals, and we just take those things and add variables to it. So that's what you would see in a lot of the seminars where, we're taking things that people already have some familiarity with, and then we're just kind of adding variables, maybe a little more stress, that kind of thing to it.
That's wonderful and incredibly impressive. I'm definitely going to pull up flights to North Carolina after this. So, well, of course, your course schedule first and then flights. But anyway, I'll definitely be there as soon as possible. Oh my gosh, please. Okay, wonderful. And okay, perfect. And what's amazing about what you all are doing is there's not a lot of focus on the actual physical health of like what your body kind of needs to be in as far as shape goes before starting self-defense or along your self-defense journey. And that's actually why I've continued my education in kinesiology and exercise science. At one point, along the path of like your 20s and trying to find your purpose, I think I've mentioned this before on the show. I actually left medical school and went into this master's to do kind of like the gun thing on the side, and then finish my education of understanding like the physiological adaptations to the human body while you're training. At one point I was like, man, I don't know how these worlds are going to connect until I had this talk with Tatiana Whitlock, and she was like, what do you mean? Those worlds do connect. And she kind of just illuminated how that comes together. And I realize that that's definitely going to be kind of my purpose. And it's incredible when people like you are actually putting that into the works. Right now I'm kind of in the background studying and doing like almost shadow work. But you are living that reality, and you're teaching that reality of the importance of physical health, and its part in defending yourself. So I would love for you all to kind of speak on that a little bit more, and like what you preach in your at your teaching academy, if you don't mind.
Yeah, well, I mean, we talk about self-defense, and then we talk about defense from self, where you're much more likely to succumb to diabetes, heart disease, cancer, these kinds of things, than you are somebody putting a gun to your head in the parking lot. And by and large, there are exceptions, of course, but by and large, these are things that we have some control over, whether it be through nutrition or just physical activity or some combination of the two. And then, beyond that, obviously, like there's a lot of mental and emotional benefits to just feeling better, looking better, whatever it is. On the self-defense, the fighting side, nobody in the history of humankind has ever gotten into a fight and then afterwards been like, you know what, I was just too fit. I was too strong. I spent too much time. That's
right.
Never happened. So we definitely make it a big part of who we are and what we do.
Yeah, all of that. And it's kind of incredible how your ability to start controlling something as simple as, and I say, simple, not easy, but controlling what you eat and your habits for exercise and fitness, and being able to kind of set routines there directly translates through so many other areas of life, like your ability to stay focused on a work task, or your ability to commit to a schedule with your kids or whatever. Once you start learning how to build routines and patterns, it helps you build other routines and patterns. So it's all pervasive throughout life.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Sometimes I'm just a little bit in shock over how well you all say, my guest speakers say things, that there's like this big kind of lag, and my fiance's like, and I'm going to take that out. It was like 5 seconds of me just like thinking about what to say. No, I love that. Absolutely. So for someone that is kind of nervous to get into the self-defense scene because they feel like they need to get in shape first, what would you say to that person?
Well, so one of the things we talk about when we teach a coach course is the people that kind of really need what it is that we do are the least likely to seek it out or the least likely to actually do it, because it is very daunting. It's a scary thing. And especially if you're not maybe a great athlete, or you haven't played sports and you haven't been in a gym in a long time, it can be incredibly daunting. In our industry, all of the ads and marketing or whatever, they show really fit people, and people that kind of have either already experienced that journey or have just always done it. And so when we talk about coaching courses, we try to explain to people, look, that they're going to go to your website a dozen times before they actually send the email or make the phone call. They're going to maybe sit on that response for a week, 2 weeks. We've had years go by before people will respond. And so when they actually show up, sign a waiver, get out on the mat, they've already done 3, 4, 5 things that were already uncomfortable for them. And it's on us to make sure that at every one of those steps, we are being as inviting and welcoming as possible, letting them know that we understand kind of what that journey is like. And so from the first point of contact, they need to know that we, and by extension, the people inside of our training centers, from our coaches to our front desk personnel to our members, it's all a collective effort. And, if you look around our training centers, you don't see skulls and flames and daggers and people running around in camo and BEUs and that kind of stuff. If that's your market and that's what you're after, then fine. But for us, the people that we feel like really need what it is that we do, that really could benefit from physical toughness, emotional toughness, mental toughness, whatever it is, and then the fitness side of the fight side, we want it to be as inviting as possible. And I feel like that's kind of an anomaly in the industry. It tends to trend much further the other way.
I feel like, so some people come in and they feel like they already have to get in shape, and we're like, no, that's what we're here for. And so we try to make sure people understand, like, it's okay if they don't finish their first class. Like, we know how difficult it was just to be here, just to come in the door. And we already feel like, I mean, if you just walked out right now, you made a huge step. And like, we have experienced that for ourselves. That's how I am just naturally. But we also continue to go out and get uncomfortable and go to different places or train in different things and do different things. So we understand that of the person coming in, that it's already really difficult getting in there. And, you've already made a big step. You leaving, halfway through, you having to sit out and watch half of class. It doesn't matter. It's like going into a jiu-jitsu class and expecting to have a really awesome armbar. Like, you probably still don't even understand how to hit the armbar. That's okay. You kind of put your feet in the right place today. Like, great, good job. Go sleep on it. We'll try again tomorrow. So there's that expectation coming in that you should be in shape and that you should know how to do that stuff. And if that were true, we wouldn't have jobs. So
yeah, you said expectation. I think for coaches, it's important to set realistic expectations. Let them know from day one that you don't have, like, here you could, let's say you want to get in, you want to get into shape. Maybe you think you would like to do Muay Thai or Krav Maga or Jiu-Jitsu or whatever, but you're just not there yet. Okay, so come try a heavy bag class. So let's put them on a path to where they can gradually, with a smart progression, kind of go through some levels of uncomfortability. Because again, we recognize that just by them getting here, they've done a bunch of stuff that was scary and daunting to them. So now they come in, we give them gloves, and they can hit the heavy bag, and they're doing something that is beyond what they had done before. And so I think from a coach perspective, training center perspective, whatever, being able to set realistic expectations for, new people is important.
Absolutely.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I love that so much. I get a lot of direct messages from women who are nervous to take their first class because of that kind of daunting aspect, especially it's because it's normally a male-dominated atmosphere. And those are a few things I try to illuminate for them. That, or if I'm near them, I will go to their first class with them. I've been to so many first classes with people. It's kind of funny because the instructor is like, "Are you going to join?" And I'm like, "Actually, I can't because of my nose, but this person may." And just so that they can feel more comfortable for their first day. So it's wonderful to know that you all are making a difference with that. It would be an honor to, if I lived near you guys, I would just suck it up and wear my big helmet with the plastic shield and be there every day. Oh, it's incredible. I wish I knew more people in that area that I could just
Go ahead.
What were you saying? Oh, no. Go ahead.
She can tell you one of the most common texts and emails that I will send is, "Where are the women?" So if I walk into a class and it's like 8 out of 10 are guys, I'm like, no, we're not doing something right. Which is super rare here at either one of our centers.
It's usually school just started and all of the moms are
that's almost for sure what it is, because we tend to trend 50-50, maybe even more. But if I walk in and it's like,
wow,
overwhelmingly men, and I don't care what the class is. It can be jiu-jitsu, it can be Muay Thai, it can be Krav Maga. I don't care what it is. I'm like, where are the women? Why are there not women here? What's going on? What are we not doing right? So it's a constant thing for us to, and it's not that, we didn't set out to become Wonder Woman Island. That wasn't the goal. I just look at it like, if our goal is to reach people that really need what it is that we're doing, and everybody here looks like they played linebacker in college, then we're probably missing the mark, So it's not that I want the classes to be all women or anything, but I feel like if there's not a good representation of women in the classes, then we're miscommunicating in some way. We're not delivering what we say we're going to deliver. There's something off in our messaging, whether it's in marketing or delivery.
Absolutely. No, that's wonderful. So I would love to ask you kind of a branch from what you just talked about. When it comes to training women, do you all tend to teach any women-specific techniques or use maybe one form of martial arts more over another?
I'll give the brief answer and let him run with this one. We do.
Sounds good.
We do some like women-specific courses on occasion, and it's not that they're learning different things or anything. It's that it's just a group of women that are being taught the program. And sometimes that'll cater more towards specific concerns that women might have, like rape situations, probably more likely for women to deal with, or something like somebody trying to grab your hair, tend to be more specific that women might experience. But we don't have any kind of like, this is for women only. And that's where I'm going to let him run with that.
I mean, my general approach is fighting. So from a technical standpoint, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference between teaching a man or a woman. From the standpoint of what kind of threats we might experience, then maybe. I don't think, like, from a technical standpoint, there's much difference. From a threat and an attack standpoint, there definitely are some things that I think are more critical for women, even from a pre-contact kind of preemption standpoint. And while I think there's some value in doing women's only classes or courses as kind of an on-ramp for people that are even more daunted about what it is that we do, I think ultimately the goal needs to be to get them into co-ed kind of classes, because it offers a more realistic kind of experience. I understand why there's reticence sometimes. I totally get that, and that's why, you know, we do have some of those classes, but you won't see on our like day-to-day regular schedule women's only courses or anything like that. But we do one-offs, and like we had contact from a Girl Scout troop today, you know, so we do those kinds of things. But I think ultimately the idea that, you know, it's well, there's these super secret women only techniques. I mean, we're very open and honest. Like, neither one of us are big. If you tend to be smaller, if you tend to be not the biggest, strongest person in the room, that matters, you know, and it's more critical that from a technical standpoint, you are closer to perfect. Because a bigger, stronger person is going to be able to get away with things that you're just not going to be able to get away with.
Absolutely. No, I love that. That's a wonderful take on that. It's interesting. Almost everyone, I honestly think everyone, actually, not even almost everyone, who's come on and spoken to women's only compared to co-ed classes, they've said something similar, if not exactly that. Like, take women's first if that's what you need to kind of like emotionally prepare yourself, but eventually train with men because you're more likely to get attacked by another man. Not that women aren't feisty, because I know some women anyway, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I love to hear those same things over and over again. Sometimes I feel like some of my questions are a bit redundant, but I like the consistency among all of these individuals like yourselves who are experts in your field. When you all say the same thing, it's very validating, and it's almost a reminder at that point that those aspects are true and kind of the reality of self-defense training.
Anecdotally, it seems like most, not just instructors, but also women realize they're more likely to be attacked by a man and ultimately should get into co-ed classes. So yeah, if starting in kind of like a women's only class or challenge or thing, you know, helps get you there, that's great. And then it's on our job as instructors, us collectively as a whole in the industry, to make sure we're putting out that correct message and making sure people understand, you know, this might be something specific to you that you face as a threat, but there's no special technique for you as a woman. You have to be good. And you have to have the mindset that you're going to go home safely.
And I think too, I mean, there's something to be said for, yes, you're more likely to be attacked by a man or whatever, but just having a different kind of energy in training from that a man may give versus a woman, just having the size from somebody that's, physically bigger, stronger. This may get me in trouble, but we've done a lot of women's only classes where there's a lot of giggling and goofing off, and this uncomfortability that kind of breeds on itself in that setting, that I think doesn't happen as much in co-ed classes.
Yeah, I would agree. And I've seen it in large groups where it's predominantly women and then there's a couple men. Like it still kind of overtakes that setting for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember having certain nights of the week where I was feeling really bloated. I wasn't recovering well, like muscle-wise. I was super sore, and I just wanted to kind of go to a more laid-back class where we would just drill one technique over and over and go over like all these like scenario-based training. And I really appreciated women's classes for those nights. Also, it's very just empowering because there would always be a new white belt, and I loved just like going over and learning about why they came into the gym. Like I just wanted to know what their origin story was without freaking them out. So yes, I totally agree. Definitely not in trouble for saying that. That is the reality of it. And I feel like anyone that's actually taken a women's only or predominantly women's class will already kind of knows that. That's definitely the truth of it. So I'm glad that that's being brought to the surface. That's what this podcast is for. So that's perfect. I would kind of like to switch gears. I'm so excited to talk about this. I've been trying to make sure I didn't rush to it, but going off script a little bit, I wasn't sure exactly what to ask, but I would love to know what your take is on the best like weapon system for women. And please deviate to like, it doesn't have to be just for women. I would like to address this kind of idea that women often don't conceal carry because they're more comfortable carrying a knife. And by conceal carry, I mean, of course, it's all concealed, but conceal carry a pistol because they're more comfortable with a knife. And I would love for you to kind of speak on the hierarchy of the weapon system and like maybe the training that should go along with that type of mentality. If they're more comfortable carrying a knife, what should they do to prepare and use that knife?
Yeah, that part is the biggest thing, because if you're not going to carry a firearm, then training, to access it and get shots on target, or training, maybe even more detrimental, training with it on your hip, just out, not covered by a shirt. But then when you do actually carry your firearm, it's tucked inside your purse or something. The biggest thing for somebody trying to figure out what they want to carry as some type of weapon would be something they're actually going to carry and have on them regularly, be able to access and have training to support the use of. There's definitely this idea that you can just hand somebody pepper spray or, one of those cool little brushes that you unscrew and it's, a sharp stabby thing, and then you're good to go. But the reality further is that you have to be able to access it, train to access it, and actually be willing to carry it.
Well, and I think for me, the biggest thing is, and look, I've designed a couple of knives. We sell knives. I think that the disconnect is sometimes, well, I don't feel comfortable carrying a gun, but I'll carry a knife. And my thing is, okay, well, so in your mind, you have gone through this process of, I have a problem in front of me. I'm going to solve that problem by pulling this knife, holding it in my hand, taking that steel and running it through someone else's skin and muscle and bone and tendon and getting bloody. I'm gonna stab them in the eye. I'm gonna stab them in the throat. I'm gonna feel the life leave them. I think most people, not just women, I think most people have not had that internal conversations with themselves. And if they don't, I think a knife or a gun or whatever is going to be more of a detriment than it is an asset, because you're going to have this kind of delay in responding, because you're thinking, should I get to my knife now? Should I get to my gun now? Should I do this? Should I do that? Whatever. And then also you do it, but then you're not committed to the action, and you end up arming the other person. So I think there's definitely pros and cons from a technical and tactical standpoint of whatever weapon system you're going to carry. But then I think there needs to be a real discussion, and only the individual can answer this for themselves, about, do I really have what it takes to deploy this thing and use this thing? And I think a knife is, it's a really, really personal way of dealing with a threat. And again, I design knives to do that exact thing, but we're really careful about making sure we're intellectually honest with the people that we deal with, that they have these kind of internal dialogues.
Absolutely. For people that haven't had that internal dialogue, how do you kind of walk them through that process?
Yeah, we and this is kind of with everything, I think. We take a very progressive approach to training. The analogy I give a lot of times is driving. If I was going to teach you how to drive and we went out in the parking lot and, we spent 10 minutes driving around the parking lot, parking, driving around the parking lot, parking. And then I'm like, all right, Sophia, you did great. Now we're going to head out to the interstate. Surely there's something in between the parking lot and the interstate, right? Like that would not be the best way to teach someone how to drive. Maybe we go find a neighborhood cul-de-sac to drive around or something. So when it comes to things like this, we start kind of pre-contact into preemption, talking about when we're going to try to de-escalate, when maybe we're going to look for opportunities to hit first if the situation dictates, those kinds of things. Because a lot of times, we're dealing with folks that not only have they never hit another human before, they've never really thought about it. And so to jump straight to, all right, now we're going to stab them in their eyeball. I think there's a cognitive dissonance there that is going to be really hard for most people to jump to. So we take that kind of progressive approach, and I lay it out pretty much the way I said it to you. We put a trainer in their hand, and we have pads you can work. We have little striking targets and whatever, and then you're going to have to visualize, okay, that's literally somebody's face that I'm taking this piece of steel and stabbing it to. I mean, people get squeamish sometimes when I talk about hitting other people first. So to immediately jump to, now we're going to stab them in the face, or we're going to shoot them in the pelvic girdle or whatever, I think is a bridge too far for a lot of folks right from jump, especially if we're talking about, a lot of the people Amber especially works with are women about to go off to college and those kinds of things, and I think there needs to be if she just spent the last 3 years running cross country or playing tennis or whatever, and now all of a sudden mom and dad want them to learn self-defense in 2 hours, we have to be honest and realistic about what that's going to look like. And I don't think it's as simple as, here, take this knife and stab them in the face.
Yeah. And you mentioned it just a little bit, kind of going in there. You can go through the motions of grabbing that knife and hitting, a target, whatever, a pad, shooting a laser beam at a target and not think anything of it and be fine. But if you really want to get value from the training, if you really want to experience something without being there, try to picture yourself in those situations when you're training to hit the target or to stab whatever you're hitting. Picture what you're doing. Think about it as okay, I'm getting out of my car in my parking lot and somebody's in my face, and now here I am hitting them. So you can get more out of your training by really putting yourself in that space mentally.
Think about how many newer, sometimes not even newer, but women struggle in classes of light sparring just to punch somebody in the face.
Oh yeah.
With 16-ounce boxing gloves on, and they don't want to hit. They don't want to hurt them. Right.
I'm like, and I'm hurting. Like, I will literally be punching, like, I'm literally punching you in the face, do it back to me. And they can't. They
right. And that would give them a knife.
Yeah.
You know, and again,
I'm having flashbacks.
No, we see it a lot, you know, and we train gun, we train knife, we train pretty much anything that touches violence in some way. But I think a lot of times it's one, on the coach side, it's easier just to say, all right, I'm going to hand you this knife. I'm going to show you how to stab somebody in the face or you know, cut open their guts or whatever. Or here, I'm going to give you this gun, and you know, you're going to get 10 shots on target at 10 yards, and you're going to be good to go. And they're going to leave feeling better about themselves. But did I really prepare them to deal with violence? Did I really prepare them physically, mentally, emotionally to deal with actually harming to the point of maybe killing another person? Even if it's totally justified, morally, ethically, legally, that doesn't mean that I've prepared them to do it. I see all the time, especially women, that don't, in light sparring with 16-ounce gloves, don't want to punch somebody in the face. And so it's a big leap. And I think a lot of times in this industry, some of these things are kind of romanticized, and I think we're doing a disservice to the people that we're supposedly preparing to deal with situations like this.
Absolutely. I love that you're bringing light to that. And often as a content creator, I am just that. I'm a content creator. I can only say so much, and people will only listen to so much. And I sometimes worry that the content I put out is a little bit of a romanticization, because I try to put little disclaimers of, you know, like, train responsibly, or, you know, I recommend, you know, training with your pistol, and, you know, these types of scenarios. But I feel like in almost every discipline, there is a lot of, I liked your use of cognitive dissonance. It's definitely hitting my old pre-med psychology days, but there's a lot of cognitive dissonance with the actual, like, application to real life and the use of a mannequin and a punching bag. I just thought back to my, like, early days in Muay Thai, and that is absolutely how I was. I was so afraid to punch people who were actively hitting me in the face. I mean, I literally went home one day and couldn't see out of my left eye. Did I tell my mom? No, because she would have taken me out. But I drove like this on the way home, and I still couldn't hit that guy. And I finally remember, like, one day it just clicked. I can't remember what happened. I think I was so tired of getting hit that I was like, you know what? I'm going to damage that person so that they can't hit me as much. And I'll never forget it. It was like this 6'5" dude. I can't believe my coach, I know why he did. He wanted me to, like, get as much, like, experience training with, you know, super tall people my height, people shorter, because a lot changes, and I didn't know that. And he was literally just, like, reaching down, right? He was, like, reaching down and punching me, and I was just like this the entire time. And then finally, I just swung, and I think my eyes were shut. I don't know. But it landed, and it took him back, and I was like, oh my gosh, it buys me time? Okay, hell yeah. So I, like, actually started hitting after that, but it took me so long. I have so much empathy for, or I guess at this point, sympathy for women starting their self-defense journey, because you really do have to learn how to make contact with someone's, like, orbital socket. And it's like, it's not intuitive or natural. So I love that you're bringing light to that. It doesn't mean you shouldn't train. It just means you need to train more. And it's exciting because it's more like incentive. And I love the light in which you're speaking to this, because it absolutely needs to be talked about. So I would love for you all to kind of describe what you all teach when it comes to knife training and gun training, and how you've kind of programmed this training regimen based on your experience.
I'll talk on the knife stuff. You talk on the gun stuff.
Okay.
Does that work? So on the
Awesome.
knife side, I basically, I came at it from a fighter's perspective. When I was first asked to design a knife. I knew nothing about knife design. I wasn't like a knife nut or anything. So I came at it from the side of, okay, I box, I do kickboxing, I wrestle, I do jiu-jitsu, I do these things. I really, my even, this is my profession, and my training time is finite. And so the average person their training time is even going to be smaller, more narrow than mine is. So if I were going to incorporate a knife into my options on the self-defense side, I needed a higher force option. What would that knife look like, and then how would I incorporate that into my training? And so basically I just decided, all right, we need a knife that allows me to fight the way that I already fight. It's just that now I have a knife in my hand, as opposed to, all right, now I've got a knife, so I need to change my stance, and I'm going to do this thing, and I need to hold it this way, and I'm going to target these areas and whatever. And so now I have a whole new delivery system that I have to learn and get really good at, and my training time is already so small, and now I'm going to take up a large part of that training time to do something that I'll likely never have to use. It's like gun and knife both. We're talking deadly force situations. The vast majority of interpersonal conflicts don't require a deadly force response. I mean, that's just the way it is. And so whether it's gun or knife or whatever, you go to these weapons courses that are weapons courses, everybody becomes weapon centric. So any problem is solved with deadly force. Well, that's just not real world. There are plenty of problems that are going to be solved that way, but the vast majority, I've carried a gun since I was 18, in some form or fashion, and I've never had to go to it. I've never had to pull it ever in my life. Same with a knife. I've had to go hands-on with people a lot. I've had to use verbals a ton. I know police officers that have been on the job for 10 or 15 years, and they go hands-on with somebody a dozen times a week, but maybe they've only gone to their gun once or twice the whole time that they've worked. So from my perspective, on the knife side especially, and I think there's going to be some parallel on the gun side, I want something that I can relatively seamlessly, not seamlessly, but relatively seamlessly integrate into what I'm already doing, as opposed to me having to learn a whole new way of fighting for this one thing that is such an infinitesimal odds of ever having to use.
Yeah, offensively with a firearm, similar idea, being able to incorporate accessing the weapon, using the weapon with kind of hands-on skills, what I already know, what I'm already training to do, so that I'm fighting and have the opportunity to go to my gun, or understand how to create the opportunities to go to it as an option as well. But similar to that, so a lot of things that I've experienced, altercations, I guess, or potential altercations, are people coming up to me that I'm not comfortable with, that I don't know what they want, and being able to manage my space and talk to them in a way that's not inviting and allows them to carry on, whether it's somebody asking for money or asking, for help putting gas in their car, or whatever it might be, being able to deal with that interaction. And if somebody just approaches me and I jump to a weapon, that's so much more dangerous than what it should have been.
And also legally you have issues there.
Yeah, for sure. So for the firearms perspective, both defensively and offensively, dealing with a firearm pointed at me and having a firearm to use on me, a big part of that is kind of demystifying the gun as well. We can put a gun on the floor right now and it's not going to shoot somebody. Like it is a piece of equipment. It malfunctions. It runs out of ammo. It misfires. Like, there's plenty of things that can go wrong with it, which means from a defender's standpoint, I need to realize that gun pointed at me isn't necessarily power, that I have responses that I can do, that I have options if I need to, if I feel like I have to defend myself. And I have ways to stop the weapon from working. And then from the standpoint of the user, I need to understand that I can't just rely on this thing to keep somebody away from me, or to continue to keep somebody away from me, right? If I hit somebody with it, I need to understand that changes the mechanics of it, and that I might need to have to do some manipulations of the weapon to get it running again, or now I need to use it to keep punching until I can get away, or whatever it might be. So it comes down to being able to fight and understanding where I can buy myself time and space to do these things. So how to put somebody on the ground so I have time to get to my weapon, or have time to fix a malfunction, or how to make a good angle wrestling, trying to struggle with somebody so that I can get to my weapon safely and not hand it over to them because I got scared or spooked and I just went to grab my gun because that's the only option I had. So there's a lot of parallel there in terms of having skills that supplement the weapon itself.
So ultimately, we're teaching people how to fight, and if they have a knife, then okay, now I'm fighting with a knife if that's what's required. If they have a gun, then okay, now I'm fighting with a gun if that's what's required. It's an extension of me, and it's an option, but not necessarily the option.
I love that. Oh my goodness. Yes, this is definitely going on the Instagram as a reel. That's a great way to describe all of that. I definitely just had flashbacks to ECQC and the simulations, which at one point I was like, maybe if I go hide in the bathroom, he wouldn't notice I'm gone. And then I was like, no, do this. So don't tell him I said that.
He would notice.
He might listen. Yeah, he would. That's such a good point. I remember this one moment. I had the simulation pistol. I actually shot the guy. I shot him like somewhere in the neck area, and I was like, "Ooh, yay! Like I won!" And then he grabbed the gun from me. I ended up jamming my finger. It was like so big for the rest of ECQC, just like a super fat index finger. And I remember thinking, like, that did not go as planned. Like I was so humbled by the experience. And I did notice my personal skills, my hand-on-hand combat. If that wasn't which it wasn't refined. It had been a while since I trained. It was so much harder to apply that to manipulating a handgun during an encounter. So I could have never said it as well as you all just did. So thank you so much for sharing that. I would love to kind of backtrack and talk about managing unknown contacts and using verbals and de-escalation. How do you all teach it? And if you could kind of almost give like I don't want to say tutorial on the podcast, because you don't have to yell at people right now. But I would love to kind of know how you all teach it to a newbie who's like never done it, kind of.
Yeah, we so first off, we start, you driving somewhere, you're parking your car and you see somebody walking around, gives you a bad feeling, like by all means, go park somewhere else or leave and come back later. If you don't have to deal with something, you can remove yourself from that situation. It's definitely better to listen to your instincts about that than to ignore them and have been wrong and now be in this altercation. So we definitely put an emphasis on that to start with. From there, we use a fence position. We talk about having your hands up and in between you to manage that person and to already kind of start to set boundaries there. We do kind of like a similar progression that you probably experienced in ECQC in terms of, requesting or just kind of saying if you want them to stop right there or, you can't help them, kind of have a move on. One of the kind of biggest emphasis we put on these interactions would be being square to that person, not letting them get behind you. And then if possible, not standing straight in front of them, being able to make an angle towards them while you're managing that situation. I can't talk about this without having my hands up and in between me and the computer because it's going to come at me.
I love it.
But I mean, that's such a big part of it is just having that boundary up and having your hands up and ready if something does happen, and, escalating if you have to, getting to a louder stance in your voice, hitting them first if you have to. If you realize this person doesn't just want $1 and to walk away, or doesn't just want directions and they're continuing not to listen to you, being able to decide that this is a problem and hitting them. And we teach a power slap or a lineup punch as our kind of initial go, getting a little bit outside the elbows as I can, and then just coming out of their peripheral and getting that one shot, running off if I have to, or following it up if I need to.
Yeah, I think Craig does a great job with this, and we're similar in a lot of ways. I think it's like anything else. You need to put people in these situations and just have constant dialogue back and forth to where they start to understand, is this person an actual problem or not? And then you have to train the other side as well, because it's kind of like we talked about weapon centric. If it's a weapons class and you're always going to the weapon, then it's not really training. You're not really forcing people to make decisions in real time. So if it's managing on contacts, to use Craig's terminology, if it always leads to some sort of a physical act, then I'm not really, not really decision making. I know ultimately, all right, well, I'm going to hit this person, or I'm going to eye gouge them, or whatever it is. So there needs to be training on both sides to where the defender and the aggressor have an actual dialogue that leads to sometimes, okay, this person is managing this well. They are de-escalating well. I don't feel like I should continue to push the issue, and it's a success. If it always leads to, well, I don't care what they say, I'm going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until they hit me or they have to draw their gun or whatever, then I don't think we're really doing a service to the idea of managing an unknown conflict or contact or de-escalation or whatever it is. De-escalation also for us, I think it's very difficult to properly de-escalate someone if you don't have the physical skills to back it up. There are definitely exceptions to this. I know people that are really good at talking. They're really good kind of improvisationally and can talk themselves out of a lot. But I think the better you are at the physical side, the easier it becomes for you to properly de-escalate, because you have this self-confidence and kind of wherewithal about you that allows you to speak to someone in a kind of calm and controlled manner that doesn't seem frenetic or whatever. Predators, whether we're talking about human or otherwise, they can read and understand energy. And if I'm saying one thing but my body language is saying something completely different, people that are practiced in this area can pick up on that. So it's definitely not a quick kind of all you have to do is thing. It's something that you have to, I think, constantly bring people back to, and after action is important. It's important to have both sides talk about what they saw, what they felt, what they heard, and then have a kind of a disconnected bystander from the 10,000 foot view to give their perspective as well. I think video is great. Anytime you can video stuff and let people watch it back. So a lot of times things are missed, and sometimes people say things that they don't even remember saying, or they do something that they don't even remember doing. And so being able to go back and watch that is an important thing as well. Once that heart rate starts to really elevate and you get this adrenaline coursing through your body, auditory exclusion, all these things start to happen. It's very common for you to almost have this outer body experience where you say and do things that 15 seconds later you don't remember. So I think it's no different than a physical tool set. It's something that has to be constantly practiced. I do think it's harder because I think it's less direct. It's very easy to say, okay, for a straight punch, you're going to bring your hand up here. You tell them how to make a fist, tell them how to engage their body. It's almost a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When it comes to de-escalation, when it comes to pre-contact, when it comes to dialogue, that's not really the way it works. So, and it's not nearly as fun for most people because it's super uncomfortable. And I think a lot of people struggle as the aggressor, being the bad guy.
When I do this, like, especially when I do women's self-defense courses or whatever it might be, we start with this, and I apologize right off the bat. I'm like, this is by far going to be the hardest, probably most uncomfortable thing you're going to do, and we're just going to talk to each other. And it is tough to be the aggressor and understand the dynamics of the situation involved and everything that goes around with it. But the decision making is so important in terms of that initial, training for managing unknown contacts. And I think we kind of mentioned it, but having the decision making within, like working on firearms offensively or knife offensively, weapons offensively, still having to force yourself to make a decision and after action it and be able to articulate why you did it. Not perfect parallels to reality, but helps get you closer.
Well, and I think this is too where you get a lot of that giggling and goofing off and nervous laughter, and it's a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
It's I'm super uncomfortable. I really don't want to be here, so I'm going to make it seem like less than it is by laughing it off.
Yeah.
And so it takes time to get through that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I love that. I actually went home to the town I grew up in to see my sisters. One is she lives now in Boston, and the other one lives in Boulder, Colorado. So they were home visiting, and one of the things I told them we were going to do is mucking. And of course they giggled a lot. I tried to not laugh as much with them because I was trying to help them see it as something serious. Like I'd laugh a little bit here and there and be like, okay, like for real now. And then I'd walk off and come back as a character. My mom, of course, was not helping. She was cracking up the whole time, but I definitely tried to get them just uncomfortable and to use their voice because my middle sister, I always joke with her, although I do think she would be feisty if she ever got in trouble. She's so kind. I remember when I was just 15, she had started driving and we drove ourselves to dinner with our parents, and this group of guys stopped us outside to talk about the car. And I think it's called flanking when the group starts surrounding you. Yep. And they started surrounding us, and we were in the back part of the parking lot. And I noticed it because I had been in martial arts since I was I think 9. I put myself in enough spaces where I've had to look at people's body language. And I grabbed her arm and I was like, we are not interested in talking to you. And I yelled at them because I just freaked out. I had this moment where I was like, it's either now or never. So I grabbed her and pulled her off, and she was like, oh, you're so rude. They just wanted to know the model of the car. I was like, they don't need to know the model of a car. We're obviously so young. So after that, that's probably the first mucking I've ever done in my life. But I brought that back up to her now she's 27 now. And I was like, hey, remember at Outback Steakhouse in 2000, whatever. And I was like, remember when you were so nice? I was like, we need to practice that. She's like, oh my God, that's forever ago. And I was like, yeah, but you're still so kind. So, no, I absolutely love your take on that. I'm glad we can bring more light to mucking. I'd not heard of it before ECQC, and I was completely mind blown by it. I was so excited to show my friends and family, even though it's totally random for them, especially not coming from a self-defense background, because it's such a tool to have in your back pocket. And every time I show it to someone, it is equally uncomfortable for me. Yeah. I always put on a face, I want to be the strong one. So, but inside I'm like, this is so uncomfortable every single time. It's kind of interesting.
You're so much more likely to have to, you do have to deal with it. Usually it's not people where you're like, oh, I get a bad feeling, but we have to interact with strangers all the time, so it's so much more useful right off the bat than I think what people give it credit for and what appreciate it for.
Well, and it's just not there's not an
Absolutely.
element of fun to it like there is other things. Like
It's fun when you're trained and you get better.
It's fun to punch
but
things, and it's fun to kick things, and it's fun to shoot things and whatever. And yes, there at different levels and progressions, that stuff is uncomfortable too as stress levels. But I don't think that this part of training is ever really fun for people. I don't know. I think it's always awkward and uncomfortable. Like, it's not for me, but I've literally been doing this for, I don't know, 25 years, and I play the bad guy really well, and I can just kind of flip that switch. But I don't think it's ever really fun for most people.
No, I don't.
And so that's hard. You know, it's hard to get adult humans to do things that just they don't enjoy. You know, like that's. It's counterintuitive to what we are as a species.
I swear, at least once a day, I'm like, man, I wish we were selling ice cream or something.
Right. Yes, you all are definitely doing the most. There's definitely a way to make education entertaining, and I feel like that's a lot of like content creation stuff. Like, some of my posts are straight educational, some are straight entertaining, but I feel like I get the most engagement when I can offer both. But you can't always do that when it comes to techniques. Like, sometimes you just need it to be serious, and you want people to understand the gravity of what you're practicing. So yeah, I commend you all for doing that so much and still practicing it. Because you're saving so many lives, you know? So this is really off script. I actually don't have this written down anywhere. I would like to know, do you teach your women to strike open-handed when they're not wrapped up with wraps and gloves?
Getting started, we typically, like, if I'm going to teach somebody to hit, one of the first techniques would be like an open hand strike. Not because they maybe can't handle punching with like a closed fist. Well, it's definitely a lot harder. There, you know, it's a little bit more technical. You have a lot more room for injury and error, even just hitting a pad. But it is a little bit more comfortable to hit with an open hand starting out, and they can start understanding body sponsorship and going a little bit harder. Like, I could walk up to a wall and hit it with my palm pretty hard and be okay, but I wouldn't go up to a wall, you know, if I didn't have to, and start punching it with my knuckles, because I know that's going to hurt. And I have a better chance of missing the right knuckles and can break things in my hand.
But to be fair, I mean, we teach what we call a power slap, an open hand strike, pretty much first to anybody.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, look, we teach closed fist stuff. I mean, boxing, Muay Thai is a big part of what we do, and Krav Maga as well. But we do play, especially on preemption, pre-contact, a pretty big emphasis on an open hand slap for anybody. Yeah.
I wouldn't say it has to be necessarily done this way, but we feel pretty strongly that having the bigger surface area, for starters, is of benefit as well. And there are definite benefits to having those skills.
When people just, even in training, they will hit harder with an open hand than with a closed fist, especially if they're not overly practiced with closed fist strikes, and especially minus wraps or gloves or anything like that. They'll use more body engagement. They'll follow through more because they're less worried about tweaking their wrist or their knuckles or whatever.
No, it's great to know. I tend to, if I only have like a 30 minutes or an hour with a friend who just wants to go over a few little self-defense things, I teach open-handed, and we'll like work on just a few strikes, and that way they can at least walk away with something. And I've always wondered if that's kind of universal. And the reason this kind of came up is because when I taught cardio kickboxing, so it was just cardio kickboxing, but I would have a lot of women come up to me and they would either say, I feel like a badass, like I feel totally good about this, and which would scare me. Or they'd say, I don't really feel like this is going to apply. Like, I don't know if I could do this in person. And I would say, well, first of all, we're not conditioning our knuckles in here. So we would want to translate this to palm strikes. And we would take, like, Saturday was more of a circuit day for like exercising. We would still use the bags, but we would do open fists and like practice palming. And I called it like ear strikes. I don't know if that's right, but like essentially like clapping people's years anyway. So I guess when it comes to working with someone, if you're kind of, if you don't have a lot of time with them, do you recommend essentially like palming being like the first thing they learn, or at least the only thing you go over? I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I think palm strikes. If we're talking about upper body stuff, a hammer fist is not a huge one for me, but I understand why people like it. Elbows, if it's very short. If I have a very limited amount of time, teaching somebody to throw good, nice, clean, clinical straight punches and hooks with a closed fist is, I think the odds of them breaking their hand is pretty high.
Yeah, I think with open hands, you have a better chance getting them to really understand body sponsorship and their strikes. And that's what's going to be important if they do have to defend themselves, especially if like this is my only chance with them. I get this hour or whatever it is.
Okay. No, that's wonderful to know. Lovely. And so when I looked at your link tree through Instagram, I noticed you all have digital training available. So for people that would like to go ahead and train with you and don't want to wait for those in-person seminars or classes, would you like to go into a little bit of detail on that?
Yeah, so we have a lot of options. FitToFightRepublic.com. We have everything from recorded seminars to digital DVDs, all the way to training with us live on Zoom. We have some people that regularly train with us, like in our classes that are held at our centers throughout the week. So there are a few different options out there in terms of getting that training, and that's FitToFightRepublic.com.
Wonderful. I will absolutely link that in the show notes. And then your schedule is probably also there for your seminars and classes.
FitToFight.com. We'll have that can link you through to everything where you can see all our upcoming events, store, about our programs, a couple other cool different little things if you click through the site. And then there's also the link from our shop page to go to the online training or get apparel and gear and that sort of thing.
Wonderful. Okay, great to know. So before we sign off, I like to give guest speakers an opportunity to just send the listeners off with some advice or just anything you'd like to highlight. So go for it.
Hit first if you have to.
Yeah.
Pet more dogs.
Okay.
Got it in.
Could be anything.
Yeah, I think if I had to give advice, there's a lot of training opportunities out there, virtually and in person, and I would just say do some research. It's when you don't know what you don't know, it's really hard to sift through everything that's out there. Ask people that you trust. Go audit a class. If somebody won't let you audit a class, that's probably a red flag. I would research a self-defense fighting instructor the way you would research a doctor. That this is somebody that you're putting some measure of your life in their hands, and I would treat it as such. Yeah,
this is like the true form of life insurance.
Yeah.
Yes.
Life insurance is death insurance. This is actual life insurance.
Right. Yes, absolutely. No, I love that so much. Thank you. So that is the end of the episode. Unless there's anything you think of, you can hop in. Thank you so much to the two of you for coming on and sharing your time. I had so much fun during this episode. I had so many flashbacks, both good and bad. I'm so glad that you all could come on and speak today and take time out of your busy schedule. Saving lives. So for those of you that are interested in the full video content, you can become a Patreon. You'll receive a thank you note and podcast stickers along with more exclusive content. You can visit the She Shield's Instagram and TikTok for show updates, pictures of our guests, and podcast highlights. A special thank you to Sagetta Gear, the official sponsor of She Shield. For a discount on concealed carry gear or duty gear, you can use code SheShield10 for 10% off your Sagetta Gear order. All sources mentioned in this episode will be listed in the show notes, which are the notes below the title. And if you like the pod, you can help by liking, subscribing, and leaving a review. Thank you for listening. And in the meantime, stay safe and stay vigilant. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.